Okay, for this next video, we're going to talk about animation transition. So what is animation transitions? Basically, when you say animation transition is the shifting from one animation to another. So if you notice, we have three animations: player idle, player walk, and player jump. So the question here is, when are we going to shift from idle to jump or idle to walk? Similarly, walk to idle, jump to idle, and so on. So for this tutorial, please open animation transition and triggers. Okay. So we have here what we call transitions niya. So we will discuss this in a while. Okay. Alright. So now that you have opened sorry, the animation transition and triggers, so we will start. Okay. So we need to view the animation triggers. So we have to go to Window, Animator, bukan Animation. Okay, list is empty. We have to select the player in order to see the animation niya. Okay, so I cannot see everything yet. Kajap. Supposed to be. Okay, so what happened to our animation? It's supposed to be attached to the player. Kajap, ha? Let's say idle, jump, walk. Let me fix this first. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're gonna select the player. Make sure you keep on clicking apply so that the changes are always applied. So go to animator. So now if you notice, we have the animation here that we created: player walk, player jump, and idle. So by default, the player state is in idle. Okay. So we need to create transitions karang from player walk, idle to walk, idle to jump, walk to jump, and vice versa. So if you notice in our scene, we will move this bawa so that you can see the animation playing. It's a bit difficult to this one, the layout, so that you can just see how the animation is firing. Okay, so let's move it somewhere visible so we can see. Up to you guys to organize it. Okay, so if I play, you notice here the animation currently firing is the idle sadya. So even if I move, it doesn't fire the walk animation. Okay, because we haven't set conditions or triggers. So we will set as first, we will set a transition trigger from idle to walk. Okay, so select player idle, make transition. Sorry, you have to create variables dulu. So here we have layers, we have parameters. So please select parameters and click add. So we're gonna create a float, which is the speed, and the second is another boolean character variable is jump. Okay, so now we're gonna create a transition from idle to player walk. Right click, make transition, player walk. We select this one, and here on the right side we have here conditions. So we have to create a condition. So the condition based on our table is, if the player is walking, from idle to walk, the speed must be greater than 0.1, and from walk to idle, the speed must be less than 0.1. So here, we're gonna takan the plus symbol. Speed must be greater than 0.1. Alright? That is the transition from idle to walk. Now, from walk to idle, make transition from walk, point it to the idle. Now select this one. So here, the speed must be less than 0.1. So if you select this one, idle to walk, it's greater than 0.1. This one is less than 0.1. Okay, another thing, in every transition, change the following. Uncheck has exit time. Fixed duration, uncheck that one. Transition duration is the duration of the transition. Yeah, so just leave it like that. Do the same thing for the second transition, this one. Uncheck, fixed duration. Okay. So next thing we have to do is to trigger. We're gonna do the jump karang. We're gonna do the trigger from walking the idle to walk and walk to idle. So for that one, we're gonna create several variables dulo. Okay. So in our player movement or player controller, at the very bottom, let's add this variable and initialize the variable here. So private animator player anim. Sini. Private animator player anim, and initialize it here. Player anim equals to get component animation animator. Sorry. Okay. So after you're done with that one, player anim, now we need to pass the variable here, bawa. So we're just gonna, don't worry about the first one, the set bool. We're gonna do the set float below. Because set float is the speed. We're gonna determine the speed, and we're gonna set the float variable of the speed yang we created tadi to whatever is the speed value of the player. So animation, if you take a look here, we have a variable speed. We're gonna pass the value there. So take note, the spelling is small letter speed. It should be here, Jua, small letter speed. So player anim that set float, the name of the variable, speed, and rigid body dot velocity dot x. So velocity dot x is the current speed of the player. So this one, we're gonna change this one. We're gonna add something with math dot, sorry. Okay, we tried it first. So I have a problem with math absolute value. I need to import something. I will fix it karang. Sekejap ah. Pause dulu. Okay. So in our code earlier, we created private animator animation, initialize it here, and here we set the trigger. We are going to change the value of the speed variable of the player animation into whatever is the value of rigid.velocity.x. So we added a math function abs or absolute value, which will convert any negative number into positive number. So this is important to determine the movement of the player. So if I play this now, watch at the animator Jua. Okay. So you notice the player is already, you see, it's idle. Tapi if I move, it goes to walk. If I stop moving, it goes back to idle. Right? Okay, so next thing we have to do is to do the jumping of the player. Okay, so good job. Okay, so for the player jump, we're gonna create some transitions. So when can the player jump? The player can jump from idle and from walk. So if I right click here, make transition, idle to jump. So here, if I select the transition, this time we have to select the variable is jump equals to true. Meaning, if is jump equals to true, we're gonna let the player jump. Else, we're gonna switch the transition to jump. So this one also, you need to uncheck has exit time, settings, fixed durations, and so on. From walk, the player can also jump. So right click, make transition, jump. Okay. So we have to select the transition here, and we're going to add a condition is jump equals to true. Okay, so save. Okay, so we go here. Since we already created it, we're just gonna create the variable here, player anim that set float. This time we equal the variable name here, which is jump. So is jump, and then this one is touching ground. Again, we're gonna let it jump sadya when the ground is touching ground equals to true. If false, of course we're not gonna trigger the animation of jump if the player is not even jumping. Okay, so let's play this. Hopefully it works, so we don't have to troubleshoot it. Okay, we have an error, sekejap. Is jump, sorry, bukan set float, set bool. Because the variable here is boolean, bukan float. So save, and let's play. Okay, you notice, okay, we have a problem. Okay, we have a little bit of problem. Let's fix that dulu sekejap, ha. Okay, so we managed to fix the issues now, so that was my mistake. So first thing, in the animator, make sure is jump is checked dulu, indicating that it's true. Now let's check the transition from player idle to jump. In this one, okay, the condition must be false. Is jump equals to false. Okay, so here actually we should change the variable name. It doesn't make sense is jump. We should call it on ground. Okay, so I'm gonna rename this. I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna create a new variable on ground. So meaning here is no longer is jump, it's on ground. Okay, sorry about that. So now let's change the transition. On ground must be checked. Okay, what happened? Okay, check that one. Sini, we're gonna choose on ground, must be false. Okay. And from jump to idle, it must be true. Let's try first. Idle. Okay. So you notice from idle, it jumps. Now we need to do from walk to jump. So we select the transition here. On ground must be false. So this one okay. This one, let's say we're walking, then we jump. Let's say while walking, jump. Okay, so you notice it doesn't really jump. So we will fix that. Change the value from walk to jump. On ground must be true. So make sure you uncheck as exit time and fix duration. So I'll play this. Okay, let's see now. Okay. So it jumps, right? Okay. So that's it. Please apply this to your program.